Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 294, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, September 16th, 2024. Hello. I hope you all had an amazing weekend. Happy to be back here with you for another episode. Not a whole lot of interesting things going on for me to report in my personal life, but everything's good here. Been busy, but not too busy to get 3 podcasts out in a row. I know it's been a little herky-jerky over the last month or so, a couple episodes one week, the normal 3, and then only 1. So glad to be back on track. Hope you enjoyed last week's episodes. 2 fantastic interviews with some incredible folks, and I hope you all enjoyed that. But we got lots to catch up on, all sorts of things going on, and we're just going to keep it local. So we're not going to talk about, the presidential debate that happened last week that, I wasn't able to talk about in the podcast, which was wild to say the least. But we're going to get into just some local stuff, and some really weird accidents that happened are going to lead us off. Yeah, as I said, very bizarre few days here in Charleston. It seemed like there was a while in the state, not so much Charleston, but we go through themes, it seems. And remember a couple months ago, there was like a monkey on the loose in one town, and then there was like a llama or some other animal, a little bit more of an exotic animal, not like someone's dog or cat, that was also missing. And it just always seems like there's themes. And unfortunately, these past few days, that theme has been bizarre accidents. Now, the good news is all of these accidents resulted in no injuries. Everybody is okay. So that's great news. But very weird incidents happened. The first one was on Thursday. No one was hurt, as I mentioned, but it could have been a lot worse. A train crashed into a tractor trailer that was hauling a military vehicle in Goose Creek, and that vehicle very much looks like a tank. You can visit the link in the show notes, but I guess technically that's not what this type of vehicle is called, but it certainly looks like a tank to me. But in any event, the Goose Creek Police Department was notified of the crash around 12:40 p.m. on Thursday. It happened around Liberty Hall Road. What they called this vehicle is a, quote, low boy semi-truck, end quote. That's actually the tractor trailer, was struck by a CSX train, and this is according to CSX, a spokesperson from that company. Witnesses said the semi-truck's trailer got stuck on the railroad tracks and was unable to get out of the way of the oncoming train. One witness said the driver of the semi-truck even tried up until the last second to free that trailer, but was unable to do so, obviously. Cause of the crash is under investigation. And again, everyone's okay. But if you haven't seen it, definitely visit the link in the show notes or Google the story so you can see photos of, the aftermath. And like I said, definitely looks like a tank of some sort to me. But really bizarre accident that happened there. But the accidents didn't stop. That same day, just a little bit later in the day, officials with Joint Base Charleston confirmed that a piece of a C-17 aircraft fell off during a flight and landed in a church parking lot. The plane is a C-17 Globemaster III, and it landed safely a little bit later on Thursday after it experienced a malfunction during a flight and lost a piece of a tail cone. Crew members ultimately recovered the piece of the aircraft from the parking lot that it landed in. It was actually the parking lot of the Divine Redeemer Catholic School and Church, and they have a parking lot for both of those pieces of the property, and this is out in Hanahan. Joint Base Charleston officials said no injuries or property damage was reported, so that's great. A pretty significant piece of that plane fell off and just landed in the parking lot. So the great news, again, no one's hurt. Even, nice little extra part is no one's home or car or any property was damaged either, which is great. But again, very bizarre incident, both kind of, military involved, which also makes it interesting that it happened on the same day. But also don't forget, Joint Base Charleston had that plane that crashed. What was it, late last year, early this year? I forget when it was, but remember, they had a pilot eject because something had gone wrong and a plane crashed. And that is, out of all these accidents, that one obviously we should be the most thankful no one was hurt. The plane ended up crashing like in the woods, and no one was injured, which was great. So we have two accidents involving like military folks or military property, which is weird. One of those accidents involves Joint Base Charleston, which had a pretty big incident, as I said recently, and then the third incident may have been the scariest, just because the folks involved were in real danger. Unlike these, it seems like, there was never really a huge risk. Even the plane piece falling didn't hit anybody. But the third one happened late Saturday night. And that accident happened on Isle of Palms. There was a couple from out of town that were rescued on Saturday night after they accidentally drove into the water at the Isle of Palms Marina. Most impressively, they were saved by a local bartender, who also got some assistance from his coworkers at Islander 71. So the couple had dined at that restaurant and were leaving around 10 p.m. when they mistakenly drove down a boat ramp and into the water. I saw one news report said they had like a GPS thing on, and it either they misunderstood it or it literally told them to drive down a boat ramp. So they didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't really see. At least that's what would appear to be the case. It's late night. Why else would you just drive straight into the water unless you could not see what you were doing? And so they go ahead and they drive into the water. Well, thankfully for them, there were some employees at Islander 71 who were finishing up for the day, or for the evening, excuse me. They were working on closing out an outside bar that they have on the property when they heard a splash. And one of the employees said it sounded like the log ride at Disney World. And so they knew that sounded kind of bizarre. And so a couple of them went, to check out what, the direction of the noise, and they see that there's a car in the water and the two people are still inside the car. So obviously that's a scary, weird thing to see, but they realized water was getting into that car pretty quickly. So the bartender, whose name is Johnny Himmelsbach, he actually was a former lifeguard. He may still have the appropriate, training or whatever. I don't know. Media reports didn't seem to know if he, did or not. But regardless, he's had lifeguard training and was a lifeguard at some point. He actually went into the water. He jumped over the dock fencing, got right into the water to help out. He tried to open a car door, but couldn't. He also tried to push the car, so it was closer to the ramp. Couldn't make that happen either. Fortunately, the couple, with his help, were able to escape through the driver's side window. So they did have one window open, and with his assistance, they were able to get out. This was an older couple. They were described as elderly in some articles. I don't know their specific age as of this recording. They were described as elderly, so that may also explain having a hard time seeing, having a hard time getting out of the car on their own, and needed that assistance. But just some quick thinking by that bartender. And again, he wasn't the only one who assisted, but he was the one who got into the water and really did the work while they waited for the authorities to arrive. But several other employees helped the couple, get up the boat ramp and out of trouble. Another employee ran to the fire station to try to help out because it's nearby. So they figured that'd be quicker than calling 911. Meanwhile, another employee did call 911. So just really quick thinking and an amazing job by the staff at Islander 71. This could have been a much different outcome, and I'm sure we're all very thankful that it wasn't. So just another bizarre accident to round out the weekend. And thankfully, as I said, in all three incidents, everyone's okay. As for the couple's car, it stayed in the water overnight. And then it was today, Sunday, when I'm recording this, that authorities actually were able to get the car and some of their belongings some had gotten out of the car at that point. Others were just, still inside the car. They were able to get those things out, suitcases and things I saw being pulled in some pictures. They got that out by Sunday afternoon. So again, could have been a much different ending. Glad that was the one. Glad everyone's okay in all these accidents. But what a weird series of events that happened over the last few days. It's been a few stories that I want to update you on. I was going to do some quick hits, but I was afraid I might leave out some important details. So we're going to talk about some stuff in future episodes, depending on what else may happen between now and the next episode. There's been some developments with cell phone bans in schools in South Carolina. There's been some announcements as far as school board races, people being endorsed. We're starting to learn more about them. And there's some other topics and discussions going on that, I definitely want to get to at some point. But Just didn't want to squeeze it in and possibly leave out any details. So to end this episode, I just have one update that I will get into. You may remember South Carolina is set to execute its first death row inmate in 13 years. We've gone over a bunch of times why there's been that gap. But they're ready to move forward. There's been several challenges to the constitutionality of the state's lethal or execution methods, which is either lethal injection, firing squad, or the electric chair. So there's been some court challenges, and ultimately it appears the execution is going to go forward, barring any big change from, say, like the governor stepping in or anything like that. And the reason for that is a pretty big shutdown happened by the South Carolina Supreme Court on Thursday. They refused to stop the execution of Freddie Owens, who is set to die by lethal injection this coming week. And remember, inmates are supposed to choose between one of the three. He decided he didn't want to because he didn't think it was constitutional. It was one of his arguments that his lawyers were making, that these were cruel and unusual punishment, and not enough information about the lethal injection drugs have been made public, so they know what exactly is happening, what exactly is going to be injected. And so he had these challenges, and because he didn't choose, his lawyer had to choose for him, and they ultimately went with lethal injection, and that is set to go forward. Now, the justices unanimously tossed out two requests from defense lawyers who said a court needed to hear new information about what they called a secret deal that kept a co-defendant off death row or from serving life in prison, and about a juror who correctly surmised Owen was wearing a stun belt at his 1999 trial. So you can visit the link in the show notes for some more information about these challenges that they were making. But ultimately, it appears the Supreme Court decided none of this information warranted putting a halt to this execution. Whether, again, you can look into it and see if you think maybe there was a basis for, to halt this, or if they were just grasping at straws. But in any event, it appears that, yes, the state's going to move forward with that first execution in 13 years. It's going to happen this week. That'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. I hope you had an amazing weekend and have a great week ahead. I can't wait to be back on the microphone on Wednesday to get you all caught up on the latest news. In the meantime, if you could, rate and review this podcast, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Whatever you can do on the platform you're listening on, that would be a huge help. You can also go to patreon.com/Holy City Center to chip in some money to help offset costs of website fees, podcast fees, and everything else. It's a big help that I can knock off some bills and things associated with all things Holy City Center. So I greatly appreciate those of you who have already signed up. Big thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio, and also Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. As I said, I'll be back with you later this week. Can't wait until then. But until that time, good night and good luck.